All right, we'll get started. So this is our second Yom IYUN. We started this last year by Yom Ha'atzmaut. And this year we decided that we would do more of these because it's important to open up opportunities for learning at the yeshiva to the community. I just want to stress that the yeshiva is always open to anybody who'd like to come learn. Any shiur, any time during the day. If you want a specific schedule, you can contact. Actually, you go to the website. Our schedule's on the website, migdalatorah.org. So since it is Chanukah, it's always difficult to pick a good time to have a Yom IYUN. Kids are off. People go on vacation. I thought Yom Shishi might not be a bad day to do it, but we shall see. Anyway, so we have myself and Rabbi Chait speaking today, and I guess since I know we all have to get ready for Shabbos, without further ado, Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Chaim Moshe Chait.
Okay, Yeshkach Rabbi Ginsburg, I just want to add, I think it's a wonderful idea to have this Yom IYUN on Chanukah. Actually, Chanukah really was a time when they used to enhance learning. There was a time that the Rambam points out that the essence of the Chashmonaim, they restored Torah to Klal Yisrael. We all know the Greek influence was infiltrating Eretz Yisrael at that time, and the Chashmonaim restored Torah to Klal Yisrael. And at the earlier times, Chanukah was a time that to intensify learning. That's really where the practice of Chanukah Gelt came around. The Rav of the Kehillah at that time would go around and give, as they say, the Faheh, the test to the Talmidim. They'd all be prepared, and the Rav would come around and go through all the shiurim, and if the Talmidim knew those Talmidim answered the questions properly, the Rav would give them as a present a little Chanukah Gelt. And that's where the minute came from. But as time went on, we get influenced by our society. So the Chanukah Gelt turned into presents, and learning. It came a time for vacation. So it's really good to reestablish the original minhag. It should be a time to intensify learning.
Should we get something after the shiur?
There's guilt out there.
Okay, it's good practice. Very good. Okay, so Chanukah is a very interesting chag. How it fits in halachically, it has a few problems. Chazals, we'll see, had trouble fitting it into the system of Torah. We know Yadus is very strict, and we have our Tayyag mitzvos, and it has to fit into that system of Tayyag. If it doesn't fit in, then it really should not be accepted, and it raises problems. So Chanukah, we're going to see, has its problems in the structure of how it fits in to the system of our Torah. And the first hint that this problem comes about is really the Gemara in Shabbos on Chaf Aleph on the Beis. And you have in front of you, and you go up 3 lines from the first wide lines, 3 lines from the first wide lines. So the Gemara says, Gemara's Kasha, the famous Kasha, my Chanukah, what's Chanukah? Now, it means a very strange Kasha. I mean, what's Chanukah? And Rashi apparently wants to put us on the right track. So Rashi says, my Chanukah, Rashi says, again, if you go up a little bit further than Rashi over there, you'll see Rashi says, my Chanukah, al eze nes kavuha. On which nes will you kaveh Chanukah? So the Gemara's question is, we're not sure which is the nes for Chanukah. It seems a very, very strange question. Now we know there are 2 nesim. There's a nes of the Shemin, the oil which lasted 8 days, and we also know the nes of the great victory of the Chashmonaim. So Rashi is explaining the Gemara's kasha as well, my Chanukah. Which is the right nes? Which is the nes that we are kaveya the celebration of Chanukah? All right, now the Gemara goes through the whole story. Actually, skip down a line. We can go Chafei B'Kislev, all right, so 25th day of Kislev, and it can't fast. And it goes through the basic story. And they came to the Heichel, and they didn't find any shemen. And basically, we know the whole story over there. And it should have lasted 1 day, lasted a whole week. And then it says, L'shana Acheres Kovim V'Asum Yomim Tovim B'Halal V'Hodah. The next year they established the Chag. So actually, the Gemara really doesn't really answer the question. Gemara tells both stories. Gemara tells both stories that the oil lasted 8 days, and they came back, and they were victorious, and and they reestablished the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so which is the nace? What's the answer? My Chanukah. Which is the main nace of Chanukah? Was it the great victory, or was it the oil? We also see that primarily we have another basic problem with the structure of Chanukah. Actually, it's on the nace of the oil. Nace of the oil is a little bit of a problem. Because the Rambam says, I didn't direct the Rambam because we don't have time to read it really word for word inside, but the Rambam, the famous Rambam, he says in Hilchos Yesodei Torah, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu lo ha'aminu bo Yisrael b'nei oso she'asa. We don't believe in Moshe Rabbeinu because all the miracles. In other words, we don't get impressed with miracles. That's not the reason why we accept Kabbalah Torah, not because of miracles. And he goes on to say the Rambam because miracles could come like a dime a dozen, so to say. People could do it through sleight of hand, or what people would call witchcraft, or so on and so forth. The Rambam says that wasn't impressive for us. What's impressive for us was Torah Sinai. That's what attracts Bnei Israel to Yadus. It was Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai with the Torah, with the Taryag mitzvos, with the whole system for our lives. That's what attracts our people to be attached to Yadus. And actually, Rav Saadia Gaon says the same thought, and he brings it out from a different point of view. But basically, Rav Saadia Gaon says the idea that it's not miracles that we should be impressed with. And he proves his point. And Rav Saadia Gaon says the two greatest miracles that happened to Bnei Israel, one is Kriyas Yam Suf. That's the greatest miracle. A sea should split. That's unbelievable. And the second great miracle is Man Min HaShamayim. For 40 years in the Midbar, Man came down every single day Min HaShamayim. That's a miracle you can't compete with. And Rav Saadia Gaon says, these two great miracles, we have basically no mitzvah practice to commemorate them. What do we do for Kriyas Yam Suf? Okay, so the last day Pesach, we read the Pasha in the Torah on the Shvi Shel Pesach. We read the story of Kriyas Yam Suf. That's it. What do we do for Man Min HaShamayim? What do we do? Okay, so niggas, we have two challahs, we have chal, we cover them. So that's what you do for Man Min HaShamayim, the greatest miracle. Nothing. So Saadia Gaon says, because we don't get impressive miracles. That's not Yadus. That's the other nations. Every religion has their miracles. Everyone does this guy does this miracle and that miracle. That's not us. Us, it's Chochmas HaTorah. When we saw Moshe Rabbeinu come down with the Torah, a whole system of Chochmah, every single mitzvah and every single halacha and all the debates. How do you do it, Mekayim, this way, that way, and all that's impressive. That makes us say, wow. What a system, what a religion, based on arguments, based on in-depth analysis. But miracles, listen, every religion has their miracles. So that is the point that Rav Saadia Gaon, the Rambam makes. So now that presents us a little bit of a question on Chanukah. Chanukah seems to be violating this basic premise that many of our Rishonim hold to be very important. Chanukah is a miracle. Okay, so what's the difference? Why is this miracle better than Man Min HaShamayim? Why is this miracle better than Kriyas Yam Suf? Why don't we make some bracha on Kriyas Yam Suf? It's a very strange thing. Okay, now we also have another Gemara that's also a little strange, a little difficult. It actually starts, it's in the last line. So the Gemara says, Amrav Kahana, Dorsh Rav Nasan, Bar Minyomi, Mishmei de Rav Tanchum, Mishmei de Rabbi Tanchum, goes on to the next page, and the Gemara says, Ner Shel Chanukah Shenicho Lamala Michof Amma. Chanukah candles, or neros, that you put above 20 amos, psula. It's puzzle. Kusukkah kamavli, like a sukkah and a mavli. So if you put Chanukah up in if you live in a high apartment, and it's above 20 amos, so there's no advantage, or you cannot get the mitzvah by lighting out the window, because above 20 amos, the Gemara says, the eye doesn't catch it. A person walks, the eye doesn't catch it. Okay, that's a very basic mitzvah. But it's the next Gemara that's very strange. Now, as we see from this whole Gemara, it's talking about Chanukah. Then next Gemara says like this: Rav Kahana, Dorsh Rav Nasan, Bam Yomi, Mishmei de Rav Tanchum, Mai Rechziv. What does it say in the pasuk? Vabor Reik ein bo mayim. That was the last week's sedra. When they put Yosef into the pit, bor rake, the bore was empty. Ein bo mayim. There's no water in the bore. Mimashma, since it says shenemar bor rake, it says bore is empty. And yodei, don't we know ein bo mayim? Ella mai, Talmud Lon, what is it teaching us? Ein bo mayim. My Talmud ein bo mayim. Mayim ein bo. There was no water. But there were snakes and scorpions in that pit. So there were snakes and scorpions in that pit. And then the Gemara goes back to Chanukah. So this Gemara has a few little problems in the flow. And what does this Gemara got to do with Chanukah? What's it got to do with Chanukah? Okay, some want to give the answer that since we started with Rav Tanchum's halach of 20 amos, so we throw this in too. That's one of the answers. It's a little difficult because the other Gemara doesn't. Okay, that's a possibility. But even the drasha per se, the Ramban makes the following observation: the pit had snakes and scorpions in the pit. So the Ramban says that obviously the brothers didn't see the snakes and the scorpions, because the Ramban says if the brothers, when they threw Yosef into the pit, if they would see in the Hashem Fakrabim in the pit, and Yosef's down there, and none of the snakes or scorpions do any damage to him, they would know he's a tzaddik. It's like Avram Avinu Kivshan Eish. Or Daniel Begova Rayos. I mean, in the lion's den. So if they would have thrown Yosef in the pit, and they would see their snakes and scorpions there, they don't bother him, and they keep away from him, and the brothers would see right away, he's a tzaddik. So the Ramban says that they didn't see the snakes and the scorpions. It couldn't have been that they saw it. They didn't see the snakes and the scorpions. Only Yosef knew. So now the question is, okay, so what's the Torah telling us? So now Yosef knows that he's a tzaddik. I mean, what? So good. So Yosef goes in there and he sees snakes and scorpions and he doesn't get bit. None of the snakes or the scorpions harm him. Great. So what's this such an important point in the Torah that has to write these extra words to tell us that Yosef knew that Hashem is watching him? We know Yosef was a tzaddik. We know there was hashgacha there. Okay, so we'll leave that a little bit open too. And then we have another Gemara, which stresses the problem both of Chanukah and Purim. Purim also has a very similar problem. What's the problem? So if you look at the Gemara in Megillah on Daf Yudal Amalef, right here, Amalef, here we have it here, and we see Tana Rabbanan. And that is it's maybe about 12 lines down. The first word on the line is Tana Rabbanan, and the Gemara's like this: Tana Rabbanan, Arba'im U'Shmona Neviim, 48 Neviim, V'Sheva Nevios, and 7 Nevios, Nisnabnu Lahem LeYisrael. These 48 Neviim and Sheva Nevios, they gave prophecies to Klal Yisrael. They, throughout their lives, told us nevuos, which we listened, adhered to, and accepted. And from all these nevuos that they gave us, v'lo pachasu v'lo tiru, they didn't subtract one thing from the Torah, and they didn't add one thing to the Torah, because you can't add to the Torah, Bal Tosef. Lo Sigra, you can't take away from the Torah. So all their prophecies that they did without making one change to the Torah. So now the Gemara says, Torah. They didn't add or detract one thing was said in the Torah. So now, chutz mikor Megillah, except for Megillah. How can they make a new yontif? How do they do that? And Purim was really structured under the Nevi'im, because it was the end of the Tkufus of Nevi'im. Chagai, Malachai, Anshe Knesset Gedolah was still there, so it was under their sanction that we should have Purim. It wasn't just Takonas Chachamim, it wasn't just Anshe Knesset Gedolah, it was also under the auspices of Nevi'im. So now the Gemara says, how they do it? How can you get a new mitzvah in the Torah? That's Baal Tosef. How can you get on a new day in the Torah? So the Gemara says, we'll tell you why. My Darsh, Amar B'chir B'Avin, Amar B'Shir B'Kocha, they made a Kal V'choma. Umam Avodah L'Cheres, Amar Shira, from Avodah to Cheres. That means you give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's Yitzias Mitzrayim, Mimisa L'Chaim Lo Kol Shkein, from Misa L'Chaim certainly. Okay, then the whole story about saying how. Good. So Gemara says that the Nevi'im said, listen, should we make Purim a Chag, yes or no? Now we got to be very careful. You're not allowed to add on one mitzvah to the Torah. Now, Purim seems to be a new mitzvah. It's not in the Torah. So he said, no, we have a Kal V'choma. A Kal V'choma is one of the ways we learn the Torah out. That if the Torah tells us to say Shira, when you go from Avdus, leaving Mitzrayim to Cheres, to freedom, certainly Purim, our lives were saved. Haman was out to annihilate the whole Jewish population. So certainly we should say Shira. Certainly we should say it. So Gemara says, that's part of the Torah. Kal V'choma comes part of the Torah. So that was the Chidushim that was accepted by, or instituted by the Nevi'im, Anshe Knesset Gedolah, Mordechai and Esther, and that was the basis of establishing Purim as a legitimate halachic Chag, Yontif. Okay. But by the time Chanukah came, there's no more Nevi'im. It was all gone. No Anshe Knesset Gedolah. And we don't have that Kal V'choma. Because the story of Chanukah really wasn't that our lives were in sakana. Our lives were on the threshold of being annihilated. Chanukah is the story of assimilation. It started to be assimilated by the Greek culture. The Greek culture was influencing Jewish population. It was becoming involved and changing a whole way of life. But there wasn't the Haman that was up to wipe out the people. It was a different story. So Kal V'choma doesn't apply. You couldn't use that Kal V'choma. And the Gemara doesn't. There was no Nevi'im to institute and say this was the Kal V'choma. So now it comes back. How is it possible that we instituted a Chanukah as a Chag? It seems to have some basic properties that are problematic in its structure, in its institution. All of a sudden, the only Chag centered around an ace. And we say we don't center things around an ace. The only Chag which seems to be without the consent of the Nevi'im, without the consent of the Nevi'im, that we instituted. Well, why are we not over Baal Tosef if we institute Chanukah? So, I think the answer lies in a very interesting medrash. Yeah. The medrash is on Parshas Vayechi. The medrash on Parshas Vayechi. So, if you have a Chumash, we're dealing with the end of Vayechi. And what's happening here at the end of Vayechi? So near Vayechi is Yaakov dies. So Yaakov dies, and Bnei Yaakov all go up to bury Yaakov in the Mars Machpelah. And we're on Perek Nun, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Okay, so we'll pick up from the point that it says Perek Nun of Bereshis Pasuk Yud Gimel. The Torah says, "V'yisu Oso v'nov Artzo Canaan," and all his children carried Yaakov to Artzo Canaan. V'ikroso b'm ora sedei Machpelah, and they buried him in the Mars Machpelah. Asher kon Avram es hasoda la'achuzas keva meis Ephron achiti al panei Mamre. Okay, so they buried him. All right, Pasuk Yudalid. Vayashav Yosef Mitzrayma, and Yosef went back to Mitzrayim. Hu v'chol echav. He went back with all his brothers, all the family that came up to bury Yaakov after the Kavua, Acharei Kovru Es Aviv. After they buried their father, they turned back and they went back to Egypt. Okay? Now, Pasuk Tesvav says as follows. Vayiru Ache Yosef. and Acha Yosef saw Kimes Avihem, that their father died, that Yaakov died. Vayomru, and they said, Lu Yistamenu Yosef, perhaps now Yosef will be hostile to us. V'hoshev Yoshev Lono Es Kol Hara Asher Gomalnu also, and now he'll do evil to us, and now he'll pay us back for the evil we did to him. Now, on the surface, the pasuk seems to saying that that they got nervous, and they said, "Uh-oh, maybe now Yosef will do something to us." They got a little suspicious. Now, the question is, what made them suspicious at this point? Remember, they buried Yaakov. Okay, so some want to say that while they were torrid in the Kfura, they didn't begin to think. On the way back, their minds were a little more tranquil, and they began to think of their lives, and they said, uh-oh, maybe now Yosef will do us bad. And it stirred up their own thoughts on the return trip back to Mitzrayim. But it's a very interesting medrash. And the medrash says, no, something happened on the way back to Mitzrayim. What happened? So let's take a look at the medrash. It's really about 2 lines, so you have to really pay to Xerox it. Now we get to you. So the medrash is like this, on our pasuk. What does the medrash say? The medrash says, Amar Rab Tanchuma. Rav Tanchuma says, Hu lo niskavein el l'shem shamayim. He, Yosef, his kavana was only l'shem shamayim. V'heim lo amru kain. And the brothers didn't accept that. Lu yistamenu Yosef. But they said, maybe Yosef will be hostile to us. Very strange medrash. Rav Tanchum says, on this pasuk, that Yosef's kavana was l'shem shamayim. But the brothers were now concerned about maybe now Yosef will be hostile to us. What does this medrash mean? What Shem Shemayim are we talking about here? I mean, Yosef was gavan Shem Shemayim, and the brothers say, oh, maybe now he's going to be hostile to us. So the medrash is really an enigma, what his kavana is. But the Meshach Chachma gives a beautiful pshat in that medrash. The Medrash Chachma says that on the way back, Yosef said, you know what? I want to go past the pit that my brothers threw me into. Why don't I go past the pit that my brothers threw me into? Because now I want to give She'ach V'Adol HaKadosh Baruch Hu a nace. They threw me into a pit where there were snakes and scorpions, and I survived. So I want to go there, I have a chiyuv, to give She'ach V'Adol HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have a chiyuv to give thanks to Hashem. A nace happens to a person, you have to mention Gomel. You have to give thanks. You have to give She'ach V'Adol. So Yosef, on the way back, he said, I know I'm going to take a little detour. I just want to pass that pit. He said, just give me I won't be too much out of our way. He said to the brothers, you remember that pit you guys threw me into? You remember that? Well, I just want to pass it for a second. Just 1 second. I just want to look at that pit again. And he looks at that pit, he's saying a bracha. The brothers look at Yosef. And they say, oh boy, now we see what Yosef wants. Now they said, Lu Yistamenu Yosef. Now we see he didn't forget about it. All these years he's telling us, no, forget, listen to Min HaShemayim, we came down together, it was Latov, it was good, 1 second. He didn't forget about it. He's going back to the pit. He's really, now he's waiting, like Esav says, and wait for his father to die to take the come on Yaakov. Now we know his real intention is. So that's what the Medrash says. The Medrash says that Yosef was L'Shem Shemayim. He wanted to give She'ach V'Adol to Kadosh Baruch Hu. As he went to the pit, has a chiyuv to give a bracha. But they saw him going to the pit. They thought, now he wants to kill us. Now he's going to take out his hatred towards us. So now we know the story makes very good sense. What's the story? That's what the Ramban is saying. The Ramban is saying that the brothers never saw the snakes. Oh, because it was either it was too far away, it was 20 amos, whatever it is. They didn't see it because they would have seen it. They would have known that Yosef is a tzaddik. Only Yosef saw the snakes. Obviously, he was down there. Only Yosef, and therefore Yosef knew it was an ace. Now, why is the Torah telling us that Yosef found out that he was a tzaddik and they threw him in the pit? Okay, we know Yosef. No, it fits in because Torah wanted to tell us the end of the story when Yosef goes back. He goes back because he has to bench Goimel because he was put in a pit where they were not Nechashim and Akrabim. That's why the Torah let us know right away in the beginning that the snakes were down. Then only Yosef knew, and now we know. And now we know that's what the Medrash is telling us. That when Yaakov dies, he goes back to give Sherach Hodah, and that's caused the suspicion of the brothers. Now the picture makes sense. So now we see another thing. Now we see that really, Min HaTorah, there's a chiyuv to give Sherach Hodah. We see that the idea to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, its source, its origin, is Min HaTorah. But the question is, what type of nace? What type of nace do you give Sherach Hodah on? So, we know there's two categories of nisim. There's an nace we call nace kederach hateva. A person's in a car accident, gets smashed, the bags go off, he walks out, I'm benching Goimel. Comes out, I got to bench Goimel. That's what we call nace kederach hateva. Can you explain that system according to laws of physics? Yeah, you could explain. Somebody got to listen. It wasn't such an ace. You have these bags. You go on this. Your velocity was that, and the bags came inflated, and then that's when you get hurt. But he has a right. A person has a right to say, "Listen, I think it was Yad Hashem." A person has a right to say, "I believe in my heart. I believe Yad Hashem. I'm benching Goimel." That's neis kederach hateva. You have a right to bench Goimel. But then there's another neis, and there's another neis shelo kederach hateva. A nace that you can't explain according to laws of science. A nace that you cannot explain according to laws of physics or laws of biology. That's nace shelo kederach hateva. That's a different nace. That was a nace of Yosef. No biologist will be able to explain why the snakes didn't bite Yosef. No biologist could explain why the lions didn't attack Daniel. That's beyond the explanation of the scientific world. That's a nace shelo kederach hateva. So we see from Yosef that it's more than you should bench Goimel. You have a chiyuv. He went out of his way. He said, let's go back the long way. I must go to the pit. I must give Sherach Hodah, because that's a nace shelo kederach hateva. I have a chiyuv on nace shelo kederach hateva to give Sherach Hodah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why I went back there. And that's why the Gemara tells us, that's why the Torah tells us, for Yosef's sake, that he knew he had a chiyuv, that there were snakes and akrabim in the pit. But we see from here, the origin of giving Sherach Hodah really comes from the Torah. It wasn't that Chazal just said, listen, it's a good thing, it's a logical thing to give thanks. Yeah, it is a logical thing. But the origin is really Min HaTorah. That's the chiyuv Min HaTorah. So now we go back to Chanukah. Well, Purim we see. Purim is very clear. Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the Nevi'im. Nevi'im said, they made a kal v'choma. They darshan, Nevi'im, Navi Kedashin. They said, listen, they Kedashin Psukim. To Dashin Psukim. The Gemara dashes the Psukim. Risimo, so every Psukim, we were always dashening. So they dashin the plus, they dash kal v'choma, good. But by Chanukah, we had a problem. There's no Nevi'im. Is this enough of an ace to give Sherach Hodah? Now, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, Batlo Megillas Tainis. There was a whole little sefer of all the victories of Bnei Israel throughout the years. And these used to be celebrated. And you wouldn't give hesped, you wouldn't fast. So I said, no, Batlo. All of them are Batlo except Chutz Megillah or Chanukah Purim. Except those two. Yeah, okay. So now, what's so special? Well, okay, Purim we said, we have Anshe Knesset, we have Nevi'im. But what about Chanukah? How could it be? So the only heter to make Chanukah into a Chag, the only heter to make Chanukah into 8 days of celebration with Hallel Shalom, with a bracha, only if we could put it back in the Torah. We can't make a Havachoma, we can't do that. But we've got to find another source to put it back in the Torah. Say this origin is from the Torah. Oh, we found a place. The place is Yosef. The Torah tells us, Yosef said, I'm going out of my way, and nes shelo kederech hateva, I must give shechadah. And nes, I must do it. So now we say, let's look at Hanukkah. Where is the element of nes shelo kederech hateva that tells us we have a matir to make it into a chag? Well, the battle, okay, listen, first of all, the battle wasn't over by the time Hanukkah came. And people win battles every day. Governments crumble, new governments coming. Many, we go through all the wars. People are outnumbered; they still win. Maybe it's only your victories. Nes kederech hateva. A guy says the smaller group held off a big group. That happens through history. Going back to Sparta, held off the whole empire of I forgot his name over there. Anyway, what was that? Again?
Carthage.
Carthage, right. Hold on. So you see, all through history it goes. There it goes. So where's the nace that we can make where's the nace that we could be kovei Hanukkah? Where are we gonna find that nace? So the shemen. That's the nace. You're right. We don't go running after Nisim. But here the nace of the shemen tells us that's the mater. There was a nace in Hanukkah that was shelo kederech hateva. That's the mater to be kovei yemei Hanukkah. Now we see that the shemen went for 8 days. That's like Ki'ilu, the Nevi'im were there. Ki'ilu Nevi'im said, yes, that's enough of a nace to be kaveya. A nace, shelo kederech hateva, you have a chiyuv. In Hanukkah is the nace, shelo kederech hateva. That's why we must say my Hanukkah, which is, what are we kaveyin? The answer is really both. We need the miracle of kederech hateva, of winning the battles, restoring Yadus, restoring Torah, but you couldn't be kaveh l'doros. That's the Chanukah. Nes shelo kederech hateva. The nes of the oil going 8 days, that was the matir for us to be kaveya. And now we see what the connection in Masechta Shabbos is. Who was the author of that medrash that told us that Yosef went to Ben Shkomo? That was Rabbi Tanchum. Same Rabbi Tanchum in the Gemara. So now we see Rabbi Tanchum says, listen, he told him the halach of above 20 amos. He said, but I'm also going to tell you what the origin of Chanukah is. The origin of Chanukah is from this pasuk. Now I told you one halacha. The next halacha Chanukah is the origin. The origin, the matir for Chanukah is from this pasuk. And if you learn the medrash, you'll see I explained it later on in Vayichi, and now you know the origin. And now we see that...
That's why they didn't see it, because the pit was more than 20 amma.
Right, you're right. It was more than 20 amos. Right, you're right. That's also correct. They didn't know. Right. That's why no one. It was lower than 20 amos, and they didn't see. So everything. Now we have the matir, and now we also understand another thought here, and that is some of the Rishonim or Gaonim really hold Chanukah and Purim is part of Tayag Mitzvos, the Baal Hilchos Gedolos. Probably the first one who organized Tayag Mitzvos, and Rasad Gaon, both count Chanukah as part of Tayag. And everyone asks on them, how could it be? What about Moshe Rabbeinu? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu, he missed 2 mitzvahs? That's impossible. How could it be? But the answer is the theme of the mitzvahs in the Torah. So maybe Bisman Moshe Rabbeinu, they didn't call it Chanukah. Maybe they called it Hodos Yosef HaTzadik, to teach us the halacha. The name may have changed, but the concept, the musag, the idea, that mitzvah was there for Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah, he told us there's a neis shelo kederech hateva yav to be kovei's man shelch v'odah. So it had a different title, but the mitzvah was there. So that's why it's part of Tayag Mitzvahs, according to Baal Gedolos and Sajigon. It's part of the system, and that is the matir for Chanukah, and that comes part of that's the source, the origin of the structure of Chanukah. I'll see something else that's interesting. The Rambam says when they set up the Torah, they put it in a way that a parsha comes out before a yontif that has some kesha, some tie to the yontif, like Atem Nitzavim always comes out before Hashanah. Makes sense. Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kucham. You're staying for Hashem. That's a good place to put it, right? Shavuos. The Shabbos for Shavuos is Midbar Sinai. That's when you got the Torah. Vayeshev always comes out the Shabbos before Hanukkah, except once in a while it comes out on Hanukkah, but never misses Hanukkah. Why? Now we see his structures very well. To tell us before Hanukkah comes, right, we have to know the makor for Hanukkah is really from the Torah. The makor for Hanukkah isn't just the Rabbanan. The makor is from the origin is from the Torah. Where from the Torah? Vaborek, ein bo mayim. So we'll say Hanukkah Sameach, everybody, and Yashkach. No, push this button here. Put this a button. Push.